Vladimir Putin is testing NATO borders for weak spots, security chiefs warn.
Here's a summary of the article.
Russia has begun probing the borders of Finland and Estonia for weaknesses as it draws up what Western security chiefs suspect is a long-term plan to capture parts of the Baltic region after the war in Ukraine. In the space of just a week, Moscow has ignited border disputes with both NATO member states, issuing a draft proposal to revise its sea border with Finland and removing a series of buoys in Estonian waters used to mark a river frontier with Russia. The moves followed a warning last week by Mikael Bydén, Sweden's chief of defense, that Vladimir Putin aims to eventually seize control of the Baltic and use it as a playground to terrorize NATO members. Diplomats from the Baltic states and security experts have told The Telegraph the provocations were part of a wider strategy by Moscow to test the West's resolve and potentially to seek out weak spots for a future incursion. Finland, and the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, which won independence from the former USSR in 1991, are all NATO members committed to defending their land borders from Russia. Another potential flashpoint is the Swedish island of Gotland, located in the middle of the Baltic Sea between Stockholm and Kaliningrad. I'm sure that Putin even has both eyes on Gotland. Putin's goal is to gain control of the Baltic Sea, Mr. Bydén, the Swedish defense chief, told German news outlet RND. If Russia takes control and seals off the Baltic Sea, it would have an enormous impact on our lives, in Sweden and all other countries bordering the Baltic Sea. We can't allow that. The Baltic Sea must not become Putin's playground where he terrifies NATO members, he added. Alyona Halivko, a former Ukrainian MP and the managing director of the Henry Jackson Society, a security think tank, said she saw disturbing parallels between the latest Baltic dispute and the prelude to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
This post received a score of 14,000, with an upvote ratio of 94%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
NATO will have to respond to any incursion in member nations or it will be meaningless.
Most people think an attack would start with perhaps attacking Baltic states, but most likely approach would be some remote area of NATO where it would be easy for Russia to de-escalate. Also, Putin uses the boiling frog method, of going bit by bit and seeing what he can get away with. Moving borders in Baltic, taking area in Arctic, have a jets invade NATO space, have a missile fall here and there, do some arson. And it works well so far.
There is a city in, I believe, Estonia, right on the border with Russia that is predominantly Russian in culture. This would provide the same pretext they used to occupy the Donbass. Do you risk WW3 because of one town? Then from here they would slowly escalate till they thought they could get away with a full invasion with NATO jumping in.
Anders Nielsen thinks Russia would try something more remote and unpopulated like for example northern Finland. The idea is to collapse NATO, so have something that would trigger Article 5 but still use disinformation to persuade population of other countries that fighting over it is not worth it.
I'm sure if any part of Finland was attacked they would trigger both Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty and Article 42 of the Treaty of the European Union. The EU treaty is much more strongly worded than the NATO treaty. The EU says that all member states are obligated to respond with the full force available to them, where the NATO treaty says that member states are to respond in how they feel is best.
I just cannot imagine a headline of Russia invades Finland without seeing hours later Russia completely annihilated. An invasion of Finland just seems completely unfathomable to me.
Right, this whole conversation is ridiculous. They invade a NATO country, they get annihilated, NATO secures Ukraine, NATO thinks about pushing further.
Russia isn't the Cold War boogeyman of the 60s. They aren't even a top 10 world economic power anymore. They're an economic power on par with Mexico that's been struggling for years to win a war against a country with an economy 1/10 its size. Imagine Mexico has been losing a war against Guatemala for the past 3 years. You scared of conflict with them? You're gonna be talking about Mexico this, or Mexico that. Nope, it's a fucking joke. Russia is a frail, failing state and everyone understands the current world order. The saber-rattling is for domestic audiences.
Greater than Russia isn't the Cold War boogeyman of the 60s. As someone put it during the Wagner incident, Russia's army went from being the second best in the world, to the second best in Ukraine, to the second best in Russia.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.